all of the hormones that describe our mental condition, uh, emotion, mood, that kind of thing, all are produced by, in the endoplasmic reticula and passed to the Golgi apparatus. All of these are produced under the supervision or orchestration, I say, of the dolichos. If you don't have sufficient dolichos, that whole process of neurohormone production is going to be altered. So all of these reports, the thousands of reports we're getting now of aggressiveness and hostility and increased sensitivity and paranoia and depression and homicidal ideation and the suicidal ideation and the dozens and dozens of suicides that we've had, where the surviving members of the family will write us and say, we know this can't be proved, but we're absolutely sure that the drug he started was the cause of our son's suicide or daughter's suicide or whatever. Mm-hmm. So all of this whole range of what I call personality or emotion and behavioral responses have to do with the dolichol deficiency that is brought on by the mevalonate blockade. And it's not just something that occurs in an occasional person. Everybody has the mevalonate blockade, and most, I suspect, will have some element of dolichol because that's the major root of production. That's where our dolichol is synthesized. Mm-hmm. And, we're all the same, and yet we're all different. And we all know that as doctors. You give one medicine to 10 people, and you're really lucky if 6 of them do what they're supposed to do. And that's the way it is with this. I expect there's some people that won't get any effects of dolichol suppression because they have alternative pathways. And mm-hmm. the same thing probably holds for CoQ10. But anyway, the dolichols are associated with all of these neurohormonal things, the emotion and behavior. And then you get down to what we talked about originally, the mitochondrial dysfunction. And yes, that's the muscle, that's the nerve, that's the ALS. I have ALS. I'm in the terminal phases now. I'm still able to walk, but I'm supposed to use a walker all the time. And this has happened in the last 3 years. And it started coming on almost 2-3 years after my first exposure. And then I went through a phase of increasing muscular weakness and fatigue that I couldn't explain. Suddenly I was an old man, and I couldn't believe how it had occurred in months instead of years. But I have hundreds of others just like me that are now in wheelchairs. I have over 500 people who have an ALS-like condition that was brought on by their statin drug. They're associated with statin drug intake, and they're now in wheelchairs. So I consider myself lucky. I'm not quite there yet. Now, the World Health Organization reported on this in July of the year 2007 when Ralph Edwards, who directs their Vigibase in Uppsala, Sweden. Now, Vigibase is their FDA, basically their MedWatch. And he reported excess ALS-like conditions seen in statin users worldwide. Now, our own FDA poo-pooed this. They said, we haven't seen a thing in our clinical studies. Well, the clinical studies weren't set up to see anything. I can't explain that. All I know is I've got over 300 ALS cases that have recently been reported to me, and I've gotten a few hundred more from Joe Graydon and his repository system. And
So it's your belief and conviction that the ALS you have was caused by the statins.
Yes, there's no doubt in my mind.
And you also refer or implied that this is a terminal condition, that there's essentially no reversal at this point.
Well, I'm still alive. According to the good books on ALS, I shouldn't be alive, but that's why we're calling this ALS-like.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't act quite like the basic, and that ALS-like is a phrase coined by Ralph Edwards when he published it. He recognized that it wasn't quite the same.
And it appears that if you're able to recognize this early on after starting the statins and discontinue that, you could avoid the progression. But it sounds like you were on it for a few years before you stopped.
Yeah. If you stop the statins early on, but in my case, I had stopped the statins. I had stopped the statins after only a few months, total of 5 months of use, 2 years before my first inkling.
So in your case, 5 months was enough to cause it, and we may be talking about literally early enough, maybe weeks.
It triggered something
Sure.
it seemed like it triggered something. But I have to say that regarding FDA and subject of transient global amnesia, right now, over 2,000 cases of a transient global amnesia associated with the use of a statin drug has been reported to FDA's MedWatch just for the drug Lipitor. And all of the other 5 drugs do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're all reductase inhibitors. All statins work the same way, so their range of side effects is bound to be very similar, and they are. And they have yet to report this observation of all of these cognitive dysfunction cases. They've yet to report this to the doctors so they can warn them that this is possible. So we have somewhere in this range of probably 8,000 reports that are in, if you added all the statins together in their MedWatch reporting, and it's greatly underreported.
Sure. So there's loads of people who are affected by this. So I'm wondering what your speculation is as to the cause of action or the mechanism.
Is inhibition of cholesterol. This is inhibition of cholesterol, and the memory apparatus requires cholesterol in abundant supplies to be processed. I mean, to function in the formation of memory, and it even uses the glial cells as a factory for producing its cholesterol on demand. And naturally, these glial cells are just as subject to statins as the liver cells or any other cell in our body. So you take a statin drug, and they don't function anymore. So that on-demand cholesterol capability no longer exists for your brain function.
So this is not related to the mitochondrial dysfunction?
I don't think so, and yet I know that in some of the cases, the brains are being damaged just like the skeletal muscles. We're all the same. The brain is a major user of energy, and I know it has to be due to that as well. Okay. But it's clearly some of the brain symptoms I thought most would be due to cholesterol inhibition. And I could still be right, but I have to admit it has to have mitochondrial damage as well.
Okay, so can you review the mechanism of how the statins cause damage to the mitochondria?
Yes. Basically, we think of a mitochondria and realize that it has CoQ10. CoQ10 is going to be the key here. CoQ10 is the key to mitochondrial damage. We have CoQ10 involved first as right in the structure of complex 1 and complex 2 of the electron transfer process. So every mitochondrion contains CoQ10 in its very structure. That's complex 1 and 2 of these 4 complexes that pass electrons along to form ATP. And so this is one of the roles by which CoQ10 affects function. And the second role is that we constantly are producing free radicals. After every meal, we inevitably produce free radicals. CoQ10 is present right there in a position right within the mitochondrion to meet the needs of most of these free radicals. You deserve a word of explanation there, because they're made into free radicals because they've just unwillingly given up an electron. And so the electron's been stolen from these, and they become free radicals, looking for an electron so they can achieve electrical neutrality again. So that's the reason that they're free and they're angry and they're flying about and they're snatching anything, an electron, from anywhere they can. And unfortunately, it's very easy for them to snatch electrons from proteins and fats and whatever else exists in the mitochondrial DNA chain. It's right there.
And the DNA, too.
That's mitochondrial DNA. So immediately, that's where they'll go. That's the best. If any viable
electron
remainders
donor
of CoQ10 will go up there. So these free radicals, first of all, CoQ10 disables most of them, because that's its function. It disables most of them by giving them electrons. But a lot of them get through. And in the cases of CoQ10 deficiency, all of them get through to go into the mitochondrial DNA. And that's the only place they can achieve electrical neutrality, is to steal an electron from a DNA chain, altering the chain immensely. So we have these two roles of CoQ10, in ATP fuel production, electron transfer in ATP, and in this mitochondrial damage secondary to excess free radicals. We're bringing excessive oxidation into mitochondrial DNA. That's really what's happening. So now you curtail that CoQ10 because you're now preventing its synthesis at the mevalonate pathway. Because of the mevalonate blockade, you're cutting out 50, 60, 70, 80% of your CoQ10. No longer does it function in this capacity, which is why you're getting all the weaknesses, and gradually, as the CoQ10 damage builds up, you'll get mitochondrial mutations. As the mitochondrial mutations build up, in a matter of time, you lose your mitochondria. So soon, your mitochondria will begin to drop off. So a cell, instead of having 1,000 mitochondria working to produce for it, will now only have 500 or 250. It could be a muscle cell, it could be a nerve cell, it could be a heart muscle cell, it could be a brain cell. It all works the same way. And sooner or later, that cell is going to fail. And then another cell, and another cell. So pretty soon we have a tissue response. And that's where your heart failure comes in, and your muscle pain, and your muscle failure.
Now,
That's the mechanism.
Are there any other antioxidants that could substitute for coenzyme Q10?
Yes, all of the antioxidants we regularly take can supplement, and then the body has some it regularly produces. A superoxide dismutase and glutathione are two standard things that the body produces in adequate amounts. But CoQ10 is still in that primary position to make a difference. It's right in the mitochondria.
And just to clear things up too, so it's really the ideally suited for this, suited. And coenzyme Q10 really isn't a vitamin per se, because it's made by our liver. So the strictest definition of a vitamin is something that our body doesn't make. So our liver makes this coenzyme Q10 and supplies it through the blood circulation to all the cells of our body. Is that the correct process, or is that how it is occurring from your understanding?
According to everything I have read, I don't see that this is right. According to everything I've read, every cell produces CoQ10, and it produces it via the mevalonate pathway.
Oh, so it's not just the liver; it's every cell has that pathway.
Every cell delivers its cholesterol, CoQ10, dolichols, any of that. Basically, it's produced at the cellular level. I don't think the liver is involved.
Okay, so I was confused on that. So. And there are other antioxidants that can substitute, but primarily it's something that your body is designed to produce. It's not something you're designed to consume is a food or a stuff.
Right, and CoQ10, as you well know, is produced liberally when we're young. By the time we get to be old people, we produce none at all. And
Well,
this is kind of interesting to think